Hello, Robert. Speak for the project. I leave you the stage. Enjoy.
Can we start? Because the music is on, so I will assume that yes. Okay, well, thank you for the invitation, Paris.com. And this is a very interesting event. I'm happy to be here in Paris, back in Paris. I always love this city and love to see the community and people from beyond the community that are coming here and learn about the Polkadot ecosystem. I'm Ursula Orkingtons. I work at the WEB3 Foundation with WEB3 Paris. And I've been working in this blockchain ecosystem for about 8 years now. So right now, this is the first time that we can see that we have something very concrete and not too abstract evolving into the blockchain space. I can hardly see the people because the lights are so bright here. But first of all, I would love for each one of you to introduce yourself because I won't make justice from all of you. So if we can start from you first.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. My name is Max. I'm the co-founder of a company called Hash Consulting. We work alongside Web3, let's say native companies, so layer 1s, layer 2s, with their communications campaigns and acquisition campaigns. And we also work alongside Web2-ish, or as I'd like to call them, transitioning Web2 companies. Again, in communications and also user acquisition, depending on their needs, should they be, awareness or whatever else.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Roland Chai, so I'm the CEO co-founder of IoTex. So we started back in the year of 2018, really focused on the intersection of blockchain and IoT. So we have done like a lot of infra work in the past few years, and recently there is a rising sector. It's called decentralized physical infra network, DePIN. So that's like where our effort is focused on. So we provide kind of blockchain technology as well as a middle layer that produce a lot of proofs of physical devices. So we work with all the DePIN projects on the market. So that's about what we do.
You already know Bertrand Perez, who just presented at the Web3 Foundation.
Hi, my name is Arnaud Campos. I'm the head of global comms at the Sandbox. So the Sandbox is a decentralized platform that empowers creators to create their own immersive experiences. Yeah, we can talk about it a little bit more after this, but basically we are providing gamifying, tools for everybody.
Product management and clarity, where we are creating a strategic positioning and messaging for everything Polkadot. So that ranges from small features, from our cross-chain feature XCM that was recently launched to Polkadot as a platform in general. Yeah, happy to be back and speak with you.
Perfect. We haven't done yet. Well, thank you, Natalie. Thank you, everyone. So I will start with Natalie, ladies first, on this panel. And because Natalie's been working quite a lot on how to create these narratives comprehensive to everyone, and she's been working with a lot of the tech teams at Parity as well. So she's been diving deeply into blockchains and the Polkadot ecosystem. So Natalie, the first question is pretty broad because this is something that we all are wondering, and you have more of these details, and how the blockchain technology it will be evolving, creating a revolution for the current state of the internet. You have the experience on working with tech tools regarding to this path?
I think that's a great question, and how I usually think about it is that the big difference to Web2 and Web1, where we usually say that Web1 was about information, Web2 was about the platforms, and Web3 is about ownership. And I think that brings the biggest impact and the biggest room for revolution. how things change when you actually own the things, and what you're seeing is not just a representation of what you have, but it's actually the asset itself, and that changes things. So it changes how we interact, it changes that we don't have our data and our assets in the platforms in between, but we have them, and that's how we can interact with them.
Yes, this is very crucial, because once upon a time, I used to write emails. Then from emails, I went to social media. I was connected with my friends, my family, and that was great. Blog posts, I'm a former journalist, so blog post was the big innovation in the media industry. And then we have seen that the centralization of the whole industry. We were very naive, thinking that we were being free in the internet, and that wasn't always the case. And now we have a big opportunity to evolve on Web3. But evolving on Web3 sometimes is not that easy. And people say, why do you need Web3? Why do you? We are super fine with the current state of Web2. So this is a question that I'll be asking you, because Web3, it's something that we know, but not everyone gets it. Why do we need Web3 to evolve with the internet? And just one thing, this is an open conversation, please chime in. I don't want to have this structure like someone like asking questions. Please chime in if you have something to add.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like, I think like a rephrase your question is basically how would the Web3 be beneficial to people, right? At the very beginning, definitely like a Web3 is very beneficial for traders, speculators, because it creates like a 7/24 global market with liquidity, so people can just come in here to trade, to speculate. But I think like a more important question is about, if Web3 is actually going into everybody, like a monks type of person or people, right? So why Web3 matters to those guys? So that's why like what we're working on is called DP, is kind of like a share economy 2.0 in a way. So if we can remove this kind of middleman, like a Uber, like an Airbnb, right? So from the middle, so they're already kind of decentralized because Uber doesn't have a car at all. Uber doesn't have a driver at all, or like a rider at all, right? So it's all about like a matchmaking, demand and supply side altogether. So if we can go like a one step further by removing Uber in the middle, then drivers can earn more, riders can actually save more, and the world becomes a better place. Like a resource just gets allocated more efficiently. So that's, I think, like essentially how this Web3 will be very helpful to just everyday people, making the world a better place.
No one else have something to add to that?
Well, I might have a partial answer, just to be sure. Your question is why we need Web3, right? Okay. The thing that I think most people should understand is that there is not a need for Web3 per se, right? It's a tool. Blockchain is a tool. NFTs are a tool. Tokens, whatever. You can use them in a very good way. You can use them in a very bad way. We need to use Web3 in the right way. We don't specifically need Web3. But when it is needed for a customer experience or something different, I think the biggest challenge is, and I think we all agree on this, the biggest challenge about Web3 is adoption, right? There's three reasons why all of us are in this room right now. Us speakers, you guys in the audience. First one is, well, I would say passion. That's one reason why we're in this ecosystem. Second thing is money, right? Let's not lie to ourselves, it's true. And third thing is adoption. And money, well, the first two elements converge towards adoption. And the main subject for everyone working in crypto, to my mind, should be adoption, because it's the only way we're going to have a confirmation that we're betting on the right type of technology for everything to move forward in the right direction. And in the right direction, that means self-sovereignty of funds, which is, to me, one of the most important things. For Web2 brands, better customer experience, and also responsibility from a user standpoint. So I don't think, again, it's a partial response. I don't think Web3 is needed, but when you need Web3 to improve something internally or externally with your company, you need to use it the right way. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to go through challenges later in this conversation. But Bertrand, you have a lot of experience. You've been on PayPal. You were one of the co-founders of Libra project, which was huge in the blockchain ecosystem. And you have a lot of experience in payment as well. And you were very early in this technology. You were very curious since the very beginning, and now you have seen the evolution of all of these Web3 technologies. What do you think that there are the key benefits or advantage of using Web3?
I think, and I will not speak again about decentralization, giving back control, and so on. I think these are the typical keywords or buzzwords that are in the industry. But what I would say is I've been working for Web 2.0, and what do we try to solve? We are entering an era where AI is going to be very powerful, and you will basically have a lot of data on people. So if you mix those two together, it's basically a recipe for an atomic explosion, where those two collide together. You will be able to not only know a lot about people, but you will be able to influence a lot people. And I think this is the key point. Then we have a bunch of usages that derive from that, but I think that if we try to go to the root of why we are there and what we are trying to do, is really keeping the benefits, as I said previously during my speech, is keeping the benefits of the internet, the greatness of the internet, while trying to remove a bit or limit a bit the side effect or negative effects about centralization and about the fact that you digitize everything. So if you're able to digitize one person's life, and that the result of that digitization is not stored with goodwill, to say it nicely, then potentially connected with AI and other techniques, you can potentially harm a lot of people. I think that's the key thing. And what I've been seeing in my previous experiences is that heavy centralization is clearly giving the keys and the control to a small number of organizations, and I don't feel that's good. And I'm not necessarily saying that they are all bad. All those Web 2.0 actors are all evil and Web 3 is good. I mean, this is a stupid point of view. There's good and bad everywhere, all right? But I feel it's too much of power. The new energy, the new oil, the new atomic bomb is data. So the more you centralize it, it's like a nuclear reaction. The more you centralize it, the more you increase the probability of an explosion. And I think that's really the key of it. Then after that, there's tons of other use cases for industries and so on, why this technology is bringing value and why it's better than not using blockchains. But I would say the key element for me, the reason I'm here, is really that central point that is key for me.
This is a good bridge to go to Arnaud, because he worked at a Sandbox. And since this technology is evolving super rapidly, Bertrand came with a very important point: AI. AI and blockchain, they're gonna dance together, and they're already dancing together. A lot of companies are building both with both technologies yet. But it's crucial to have security, because in the decentralized world, we need a lot of security and privacy. Some say that privacy is crucial in order to not monetize with your data. So how does blockchain enhance security and privacy in the context of Web3 applications?
Okay, well, maybe I want to take a step back and explain a little bit how the Sandbox got to Web3, because originally it's actually a mobile game that came out, obviously, as a Web 2 application that was made in 2D, where anyone could create their own assets by just really, with a tap of a finger, create a sprite and then a character, and then also could put together an entire game level, really. And actually, this app is still available on the App Store, this older version of the Sandbox. And it was very successful. It had 14 million downloads and a lot of active users. But one thing that the co-founders noticed is that the engagement started dropping because I think, to kind of bounce off of what you were saying, there was really a lack of reward for the creators. Basically, the sandbox itself was really living through UGC, but the users who created all those contents weren't really rewarded for it. So that's where the co-founders thought, when they saw the first collections, such as CryptoPunks and CryptoKitties, they started thinking, this is where the blockchain can actually solve this problem. And obviously it does have to do with security also, but I think it has to do with empowerment, where now with the sandbox, this new version, which is now in 3D, you can create your own assets and all the tools are free. There's one that creates the assets, the other one called Game Maker that allows you to put all those assets together into an immersive experience. Creators now own whatever they make. And through that, obviously, because they have their own wallet and everything, even if there's a problem on the sandbox side, they will still own all of that. So I think in terms of security, there's this aspect, but beyond that, I think it's really about empowerment and making sure that people really feel rewarded for their contribution to making the sandbox what it is today. And so I think that's where it's really key. Now, in terms of security, obviously, I think there are certain applications that the sandbox is solving by being Web3 now versus Web2. One that we can think of, obviously, is the fact that they own all of their assets. It's really just true ownership. If they want to take it somewhere else beside the sandbox, once they've created an asset in the sandbox, but then they have a community and they can use whatever NFT to create a community on Discord where all the NFT owners are there and everything. And the fact that they're not dependent on the sandbox, again, makes it a lot more interoperable. For security purposes, I think there are certain things that you can think of, but I think it's really the fact that everything is verifiable and you don't have to, again, go through a centralized authority to check for everything. We've seen it with, sometimes, rewards that we give to, different users and everything. All of that can be done through the blockchain, making it a lot more secure.
Security is key in this ecosystem. And privacy as well. That was the Cyberpunk Manifesto, right? In 1992 or 93, that they were mentioning about all of these issues as well for the current state of the internet. So I'm going to go to an open question. Please chime in and be part of this conversation, because this is an important one, because a lot of people say, okay, blockchain is great, Web3 is great, but where are the use cases? We need to see the tangible use of this technology. So I will start with you, Natalie, because you've been working with some of these specific examples on how do we provide real world use cases for this blockchain ecosystem. If your grandmother will ask you, what do you do? I work on blockchain, but what do you do? So explain to her in a very specific example. Same to all of you.
Okay, usually my examples would have been around internet, but I'm sure she would understand the internet as well. I'm quite happy that in the last couple of years we've also seen use cases beyond the B2B use cases and the finance use cases. So everything that we use in the internet, from social, we've given some examples in social, to cloud storage, and I think they're pretty strong. And again, it's everyone who's in Web 2 understands that we need these services. We need something like Dropbox or other cloud storage providers to store our data and give access to everyone. And it's only, and I think that's how I like to think about it, it's this can't versus won't thing. So usually we trust that things will just exist and they will continue to exist, that they are secure and that they won't go bankrupt and they won't stop their services. But it's the can't thing that Web3 makes a difference for. So there are many industries where you actually need to save your data for decades, 50 years, 70 years, and you're liable to do it. And also in social networks, imagine, I think all of us, we're in some social network where we would actually like to change if we had the chance, but we're staying there because of our connections. And if we had the chance to leave and take our connections with us and take our accounts with us and just move over to something else, I think that's true freedom in Web3. And I quite like that we're now seeing also more B2C use cases, beyond the things that we talked about 10 years ago, from supply chain to finance.
You know, when I talk with my guys, I usually compare crypto to lithium, which is the most important material for making batteries, for making Tesla car, right, for example. But as a driver, as an everyday person, you use Tesla, drive Tesla, charge Tesla. Do you really care about the lithium, how it works, why it works? No. So I feel the same. Like the technology, right, if it's useful, it's always kind of transform some certain experience for everyday people, but they don't have to understand why it works and how it works. I feel like crypto will be such a type of lithium, type of technology, eventually change the world, but not everyone understands.
Two things or two examples I will add as to concrete example of why blockchain is relevant. One is something that we do a lot with some of our clients is, again, customer experience. There's lots of different things in there, but basically having an NFT reliant ownership, not ownership, but like participation in an experience of a brand or something. That's, to me, one good example. Though it shouldn't be just a glorified membership. That's something that we need to work on as well and that we're still working on. And the second example, which is to me the most important in terms of adoption and in terms of breaking the barrier of entry to investment, is tokenization, or recently rebranded as real world assets, or RWAs. To me, this is one of the biggest revolutions that's been happening thanks to blockchain. You can tokenize anything. You can tokenize wine, you can tokenize equity, you can tokenize bonds, stocks, whatever you'd like, and you can completely destroy the barrier to entry to any form of investment. And that's absolutely huge. Let's say you want to diversify, right? Inflation is through the roof. Depending on where you are, you want to invest in gold. The barrier to entry, if you want to invest in gold, which is one of my previous experiences, is pretty high. Gold bar is going to be around $50,000, $60,000. What if you could buy just $5 of that, or 10, or 50? There's no way you can actually provably, authentically do that without blockchain. There are Web 2.5 solutions out there. They're just not perfect. Blockchain allows you to be 100% transparent about everything that happens on the blockchain. Should it be a private or public blockchain? Doesn't really matter, as long as it's, you know, something that you can check and you can audit. So yeah, to me, tokenization is a really good fucking example, if I should be honest.
I think to your previous point, use cases are important, but user adoption is much more important. And this technology will be successful the day we stop talking about crypto, protocols, and these kind of things to end users, and that we are requesting end users to have their black belt in ERC20, in whatever protocols, in whatever technologies. Like if today we were asking people to be a master in SMTP or other protocols to be able to send an email. So simplicity and providing those abstraction layers that are able to take care of everything for the end user. So we don't ask the end user to be to go through a complete blockchain crash course and be very knowledgeable is very important. And clearly the projects that will be successful would be the ones hiding that complexity and basically providing a complete seamless experience to their end users, so not even the end users know or notice that they're running on a blockchain. That's the key to success.
Yeah, well, this is very important, and we're going through the challenge of this technology. But first of all, that was a very good point, and Bertrand, it is true that we need to talk about the use cases in a broader way, not about the technology, but we still always stuck with something because we keep talking about different narratives that are super technical, like DeFi, NFTs. NFTs are becoming mainstream now, but still, still technical. And so we will need to use new words in order to create this more user-friendly experience. But we still, beside the adoption and the massively, we're still going through different challenges. And one of the biggest that we have seen lately is regulation, especially in the US, Bertrand. And you've been working, I can't deny, I have to ask you something related to regulation, because you've been super actively involved in all of this. How do you see the landscape of regulation, which is one of the challenges that we are facing right now on the blockchain ecosystem? How do you see different jurisdictions evolving or adopting this blockchain narrative?
So it's very diverse depending on the geographical areas you are located. It's a bit touchy in the US currently, as a lot of you would have heard what's happening over there. But there are other areas that are much more friendly to this space. And if we zoom back in time, Switzerland, for example, was the first one of the very first to really create a framework and a space where Web3 companies were able to execute within a known and reliable regulatory framework, so that you can build your business, you can invest, and without the threat of being sued because you missed something. The framework is very clear. You are either classified as different types of tokens, and depending on the classification that you know from the beginning, then you need to apply by a certain set of rules, and if you do so, then you don't get a bad surprise. Other areas came later, and right now, if we are talking about Europe, for example, the European Commission has been pushing strongly this regulation called MiCA, which is, I will not call that a Web3 or blockchain regulation. This is really much more a stablecoin regulation. That's basically the reaction of the European Union to the Libra project. So it's a way for the EU to make sure that they keep control over stablecoins within the space. But aside from that, they are taking an interesting approach where they don't want to regulate the whole Web3 as a unique thing, because Web3 is, there's a lot of different kind of usages, and they want to, and so aside from stablecoins, they're working on NFTs, for example. So how should NFT be regulated? It's just one piece of Web3, but it's a different kind of animal by itself. DeFi, Metaverse, and others. So they're taking a much pragmatic approach than in the US for now, and trying to keep the value of the innovation. So for once, Europeans are not pushing innovation outside, which is great. They're trying to keep this one inside, but trying also to avoid the dark side of the force, I would say, and try to fight or reduce the negative effects. And then, as I said previously in my presentation, there's areas like Japan. Japan is very friendly to Web3. They are clearly having an agenda of pushing innovation, pushing companies to develop there in that space, of course, within a given framework. But I think we tend to be too much US-centric, and for sometimes for good reasons, because it's a big market. So, and we tend to forget or don't see the good news that are happening in lots of other areas of the world, where people are getting the value of this technology and they're willing to do it and to let it thrive, provided it's done in a good way and it's not helping bad usages like money laundering, etc. And none of us want that, obviously. But I think I'm very positive from that perspective. And even I think in the US, there's also some hope that the approach could change, because now they're starting to see that there's a lot of innovation and a lot of companies in this space that are going out of the US, and potentially this could be a big miss for the country, and it's a great land for innovation, so they cannot afford that. So I think there's some hope, but beside that, in lots of other parts of the world, it's taken seriously in the sense helping innovation, letting innovation thrive, while trying to reduce the potential side effects.
That's great to hear. There's hope. So we will see the next coming month how everything will evolve. But I agree with you. I think that Asia is being more actively evolving into these new technologies as well. While in the US, they need to organize themselves, because one thinks what the SEC says, and then the judge, we just saw that with Ripple this week, or last week. But anyway, this is still evolving, and there's not the last word yet. But I don't know how much time do we have left, but I think that we need to have a couple questions, and this one is going to be like for all of you. Please chime in if you have something to add, because all of you are building in this technology, and all of you will have something to say. Well, we know that blockchain empowers individuals, and this technology, it is still in the evolving phase. So how do you think that in terms of data ownership, we will empower these individuals with Web3?
Could you rephrase the question? What exactly do you mean in terms
How
of
does
data?
Web3 and blockchain empowers individuals, basically, in
So
terms of data ownerships?
Well, you have control over everything you do, right? On-chain traceability is one thing. Let's say you have an Ethereum name service, right? Your name is Joe, for example. Joe.eth is your ENS. It's going to have a trace of every single thing that you do, should it be on Ethereum or any EVM-compatible chain. So it responsibilizes people a lot, because you have to pay attention to everything that you do, because it leaves a trace. But I don't think I'm really answering the question here, to be honest.
It's not a black or white. It's just, what do you think how this technology will empower individuals? We know that we are evolving in the current state of the internet, and right now with Web2, we know the implications of Web2 when you go into the internet. Web3 is something different.
Yeah, well, then true ownership is really something that differs from what happened before. We talked about video games with the sandbox, let's say skins, for example. If you're a video game player, let's say you spent hundreds, if not thousands of euros or dollars in skins in a game, the fact that these skins are today non-transferable is a small problem that Web3 can alleviate. And overall, again, it's about self-sovereignty of funds, self-sovereignty of assets overall. You are the actual owner and beneficiary of everything that you own. Talk to your parents about this, let's say, or talk to your grandparents about this. Do they actually own anything? For the vast majority of the assets, there's going to be a middleman in between, or middleman or middlewoman in between. With Web3, that changes. You are, for the most part, if you're self-sovereign and you don't use, centralized solutions, you are the actual owner of everything that you own. It sounds a little weird, right? But when you think about, again, our parents, grandparents owning their homes, let's say, for example, they don't really own it as long as they haven't really fully paid for it. It's, property of the bank. And you can apply that framework to pretty much anything in finance. And I think Web3 helps a lot in alleviating that. And also, it helps a lot for small portfolios to be actually the owner of what you own. It's a weird sentence. It should have always been true, but I don't think anybody, or I don't think everybody has ever really owned what they own, if that makes sense. And I think Web3 actually allows that.
Yeah, basically what you say, I have a very interesting story to share. So we did like an experiment in the year of 2020. We actually building, of course, with a hardware partner, like a smart home camera that basically implements you own your data type of idea, right? So you own the private key, you own your Bitcoin. The same thing, you own the private key, you own all the data coming out from your smart home camera. Then you have all the control. So we actually have this one productionized idea. We sold like a 20K such a camera, mostly in United States on Amazon.com. It's a small success. But most interestingly, like we found, people really don't care about that. Like everyday people, they have no sense about own my data, or like, I want privacy, I want to fully, kind of own my data at all. what they care about is if there's a way to monetize the data, maybe through AI, through like machine learning, through some other stuff, so they can earn like $1 per day. So then they start to care about, okay, so this is my data. I'm definitely getting my $1 back every day.
And also beyond, maybe adding to Maxime's last point about the small businesses, I think beyond ownership, there's also the point of access. So individuals and small businesses all around the world who weren't given access because they were dependent on a certain platform or service operating in their area, they relied on them and often just didn't have the access. And I think one benefit of Web3 through data and ownership is also access.
And I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I think, bouncing off of what everybody's saying, there's definitely a lot of success stories among our also builders in the sandbox. It's something we see pretty much every day of people who manage to, switch to maybe like a 9 to 5 that they weren't super happy with actually living from their own creations. And the only reason for that is because, they own the assets and can monetize them right after. If they want to create an NFT collection, for example, then they just can create it and then sell it on the blockchain. So I think, yeah, it's something we already see. I think we talk about, Web3 as something of the future, but it's already starting to set in. And I think when you were talking about, Bertrand, all the kind of different words that we were starting to use, I think as more people start getting, being empowered by this technology, they're not going to use those words anymore to a point where hopefully, just like we don't say, hey, I'll meet you on the internet, I'll talk to you on the internet, we just, use whatever name of the platform we're using. I think we're going to get to a future where, more and more people will not be necessarily using the word NFT, RC20 or whatever, and just keep moving with the actual object, what it represents to them as a word for it.
Bertrand, you were about to say something?
No, I think it was...
One thing I'm going to add, also coming back to what you said about AI and social networks, the problem that we're going to face and that we're already facing today is that it's super easy for anybody to fake anything. So the vast majority of people or users have access to internet, right? Midjourney and language learning models are not that expensive, comparatively speaking, to other solutions, which means that anybody can do anything pretty much. So how do you guarantee the fact that the person you're talking to is not a copycat of the person you'd actually be willing to talk to? Or how do you guarantee that a piece of art is actually, the piece of art that you are willing to buy or that you're willing to invest in? And I think that's also one of the main things that's interesting about blockchains is in a world that we live in today where anything can be fake at any moment in time, blockchain is maybe the only solution that allows, or one of the only solutions that allows you to be confident in the person you're talking to or be confident in the thing that you buy. And I think it's one of the most prevalent things about blockchain today. And it's funny because you have lots, so to take a bit of a more macro approach, in VC conversations and mostly in the investment world, there's been a rotation from crypto investments to AI, right? AI is the new thing. Everybody wants to invest in AI. But the funny thing is, AI actually justifies the pertinence of blockchain. Again, in the recent example I just gave. So maybe we'll see a rollback of those investments. I don't know. But yeah, just one more example.
That is a very good example. I mean, Bertrand just mentioned it, that we have the blockchain, which is the data, and I'm sorry, the data is the AI, and the provenance of that data is blockchain. So it match together. But I don't know how much time do we have left, because I have the 2 minutes. Okay, so we have 2 minutes, so very quick. Last question, very open to everyone as well. We know that Web3 is something that is still evolving. We have some challenge, but Bertrand is very positive on the regulation side that we are going to have a good surprises in the next coming years. And we know that we need to simplify the words on blockchain as well. And we need to get into the masses. How do you see blockchain technology and Web3 this year? evolving? Which use cases? At the Web3 Foundation, we just mentioned it, that we're working with new verticals, social media, music, and video gaming as well, which are growing rapidly in order to get more mass adoption. How do you see this technology evolving? I know that it's super broad and it's open to each one of you because each one of you are building in different ways with this technology. Maxim.
So which way is it going to evolve, or how is it going to evolve? That's what you're asking?
Yes.
Coming back to what you said about the words actually right before, we're using complex words like non-fungible tokens, DeFi, stuff like that. I don't think the words should change that much. The experience should change, however. Coming back to what you said as well, the only way we're going to achieve adoption is when people all use blockchain without even realizing it. Like, you use internet every single minute of your day, but do you know how the TCP/IP protocol works? I don't. Not a lot of people do, comparatively speaking to the number of users of the internet. Blockchain is going to be the same. That's what I'm convinced. So in which way is it going to move, or is it going to change? I'm not really sure. It's going to be, more complex on the back side and more simple on the front side. I think that's the way we should go forward, because the best products, or let's say the products that are the most pleasing to use are a simplified version of a very complex product. Think Apple, right? It's very complex. There's an OS behind it, but it's super easy to use. When blockchain apps or DApps, I think it's more favorable to have DApps. When those DApps have a UX, UI that is closer to what Apple or any of those big builders do, we'll have a way bigger rate of adoption. That's what I would say. So I'm not entirely sure how it's going to change. It just has to become more simple.
Regarding to words, just one thing. When you're using internet or sending emails, you're not saying, I'm going to use HTTP, protocols in order just to send an email. You just send an email and you don't use those words.
Yeah, and also coming back to email specifically, I'm not entirely sure it's the case right now. I think we have more advanced solutions, but back in the day, one of the first integrations of proof of work was actually on emails. Adam Back was the one who worked on this. So do you actually know that you're using internet and blockchain when you're sending an email? No, you're just writing whatever you want, and then you click send, and that's it. And once we've achieved that, for DeFi NFTs, we're going to move forward a lot. We don't want to use MetaMask for another 20 years. Like, nobody wants to do that, even us.
Yeah, to me, I think two things would definitely go forward in parallel, right? So one is about DeFi and the research on more primitives, such as account abstraction, zk roll-up solutions, and also off-chain compute, like we're working on. So definitely those primitives, by each of themselves, might not be that powerful, but there is some sort of composability. If someone or the app, can combine them all together, I think there will be a aha moment to a lot of people. And another thing is more on the vertical exploration, right? So we really don't know which will be the killer app, like you were asking. But I believe a lot of developers are trying many, many different ideas, and definitely some of them will have a win. And also these two things, vertical exploration and the primitive R&D, I think they have kind of feedback to each other, see where it goes. So this is how I see the involvement of the thing.
I think for adoption, that was your question, how this is going to grow during this year. There's a lot of the space is focusing on B2C, so we are all looking for the killer app that is going to conquer 100 million users overnight, and that's going to be the holy grail of blockchain. That part could potentially exist, even if I don't know which will be the application, but that could exist. But there's also a part that is overlooked, and that I think is really important, is the enterprise world. And in the enterprise world, so blockchain adoption by enterprise, you have two main use cases. One is optimizing existing processes within enterprises that are suboptimal because of the way they are implemented, and where blockchain/Web3 technologies can increase and optimize those processes. And there are tons of use cases, whether it's in the financial space, but not only, in basically any vertical that different enterprises are covering. They are either relying on legacy platforms and legacy infrastructures that are not scaling enough, or are trying to solve problems of 2023 with technologies that were invented 15 or 20 years ago. So that's the first part, which is how Web3 blockchain technologies can help enterprises optimize existing processes, saving those bips of margin that are key for them. And when you're in industries where basically you're making a 1% or a 1.5% benefit on your yearly revenue, every single bip that you can save here and there is just a huge win. And the second part, so that's optimizing of the existing processes, and the second part is new services that enterprises can sell to their customers, whether they are B2B, so other businesses, or B2C, end users, that they can deliver in a better way with a better user experience using Web3 technologies. And that whole enterprise bubble is clearly, I think, overlooked by the crypto industry, because the industry tends to think too much in B2C mode, right? And Natalie, you mentioned supply chain before, so those are also, that's a clear example of a vertical where a supply chain is interacting with tens, hundreds of different stakeholders. There's no trust. They don't trust each other because basically you don't know those people, or it's complex. And blockchain was basically designed for that kind of use cases. And there are tons like that. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot has already been said. I do agree with the aspect that I think a lot of the solutions are in B2B solutions, things that are under the hood that most laymen wouldn't really need to be aware of as they use this technology. I think beyond that, obviously there's still communities that are going to be built around blockchain. I think it's here to stay within the actual scope of what we know today to be the Web3 community, or however you want to call it. But for it to hit mass adoption, I think we've already talked about this. It's mainly about making it very seamless to a point where just as we said, all the protocols are completely. There are so many layers of abstractions that you don't realize they're there. I think certain things though that when it comes to supply chain, again, verifiability, there's a whole new slew of, I think, sea change coming in with education and all the things that AI is providing that might also create a lot of problems, as you mentioned, Max. A lot of those can be fixed. You see it also just in NFT culture overall. You own an NFT doesn't mean that you necessarily you're part of a community, and I think based on all the generative AI that's coming out with a lot of people, talking about ownership of this, because you just write a prompt and then it generates a picture. One way to at least be certified as the original creator of that, obviously the blockchain would provide a solution for that, where apparently legal frameworks aren't really in place yet. That's one thing we can think of. The other thing is, I think, education when it comes to AI. An AI can really teach you a lot of different things. You can learn a lot. I mean, it's like having your personal tutor, no matter what you want to learn, if it's a language, if it's programming or math, and where I think AI is really super helpful. I think when it comes to being able to certify all that as we go into probably more diversified ways of teaching people, and maybe schools won't be the only way, the only place where you can learn. It's already the case with MOOC and everything, but I think it's really going to keep going developing. I think, again, the blockchain can provide that kind of certification solution that a lot of people are going to be seeking in the future. So I think it's a bit early to see what new applications of the blockchain are going to be. I know, from the sandbox perspective, definitely the ability to empower creators, which we've already covered, I think is already there and is going to keep growing. We have, over 300 partnering studios, whether they're really small or really big, and whether they already have Web 2
development facilities, or they're just started really with the sandbox. We'll see more and more of those people coming in and joining the ecosystem and developing that also through interoperability into different metaverses, which is really exciting.
I would also have 2 points. One is about technology. So I think what we are going to see this year and next year is everything cross-chain, so interoperability and composability. We now have the tech, and it's up and running, and it's performing and functioning, and things like using login credentials for your NFT marketplace. So they are, when you think about the things that we can combine, and once we move out from the silos that we currently have in Web3, I think that's going to be super powerful. And industry-wise, that's the second point. I have the feeling at South by Southwest earlier this year, we were approached by so many media companies and in entertainment and music who said, we have a huge community, we have a community of millions, but no one cares. If we stop tweeting tomorrow, if we stop posting tomorrow, no one would complain. And I think that is really big, and we have seen this, and we have given some examples earlier in the talk. I think what we are going to see is this community building around, with fan engagement in the entertainment and music industry.
Perfect. So that was a great wrap, Natalie. Thank you. All we know that the internet is changing, although it seems like a long, long time, 10 years, 12 years since Bitcoin white paper was released, 12 years now. But we're just at the beginning of this exciting journey, so we will see more of this evolution. Thank you all, and thank you to the organizers to having us today here at Paris.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if the mic,